We continue to talk free agency here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today, defensemen Gavrikov, Provorov, Dumoulin, Grzelcyk, Orlov, Burns. There's a lot to get to coming up on Locked On Sabres.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into this Friday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is presented by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a Friday. As always, be sure to check us out on our YouTube channel. If you would like to watch the show, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and Locked On Sabres Text Club, that's there for you over at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. We are a week away from the NHL draft. We are 11 days away from NHL free agency. We are starting to see some trades be made in the National Hockey League. We had Erik Haula traded for felt like the 9th time in his career in a deal involving Nashville from a couple of days ago. Dallas trading Mason Marchment, 20-goal scorer, big winger, to Seattle, basically just to free up cap room that you'd expect makes it easier for them to retain Jason Robertson and Thomas Harley. We'll see if they're able to do that. So you're starting to see some deals come in, and a lot of J.J. Peterka smoke. Looks like the Alex Tuch worries have died down a little bit, and really the next 2-3 weeks are going to shape the 2025-26 Buffalo Sabres in a massive way, more than the last 6 months, more than the next 6 months. The next 2 weeks are going to be what decides whether this team takes a step forward or not, in addition to all the work that the players and coaches are doing during the offseason. How does Kevyn Adams shape this roster? We are going to find out. And there are a lot of different trade conversations that we have had and can have. Today, we'll continue on free agency. We've talked a lot about some of the forwards. Not a lot of big name defensemen. So today, Owen Power partners will be the subject of today's episode, looking at different options and one idea that I think stands above the rest as the perfect Owen Power partner, almost perfect for what you'd be looking for in Vladislav Gavrikov, who we will talk about at the beginning of today's show. But there are some big names like Ivan Provorov and Brent Burns and plenty of others that I want to touch on today as well. And then next week, we'll get back into some draft stuff. We'll get into some draft stuff, and we'll get back into some free agent stuff, trade stuff. Very quickly, on the trade front, every day that passes, it appears as though J.J. Peterka's agent, would be my guess, Alan Walsh is his agent, very active on social media, is putting it out there more and more. This team is interested in Peterka, and this team is interested in Peterka. It was the Rangers, and then it was the Calgary Flames, and it was the Tampa Bay Lightning, and on and on and on. When you get that many teams mentioned, it makes me think that the agent is the one that is pressing for that. And if it's Peterka's agent that's doing that, then that would be some solid defense, some solid evidence, I should say, that he does indeed want out. So every day that's passing, I'm feeling like it's more and more likely that Peterka will be dealt. Also, we haven't really talked about it in a couple of weeks because I haven't seen any reporting on it, but I got one text question about Bo Byram and whether, like, all's kind of quiet on the Bo Byram front. Do we still expect him to be dealt? And I very much do. I would be floored if he ever played another game for the Buffalo Sabres. I think he is definitely getting traded. It is a little interesting that we're not hearing anything about it, but I do believe that we'll see a trade. And then the Jason Robertson idea. Did it die yesterday with the trade of Mason Marchment to the Dallas Stars? And the simple answer to that question is no, it didn't die, but it certainly didn't help if you're hoping that Robertson does get dealt. The Dallas Stars, with a $95 million cap this year, are already at $90.5 million, and they only have 16 players under contract. So they got to sign 7 more deals, and they only have $4.9 million to spend. And Robertson's not the only big ticket item. I mean, Thomas Harley, who has 1 year left on his deal at $4 million, and then he's an RFA. That is somebody that will get an extension. And again, those other 6 players that they'll have to sign, 7 players they'll have to sign, will fill that in. So no, they still have to make some moves if they're going to keep Robertson or they're going to trade Robertson. So no, you shouldn't assume that it's over, but of course we already were thinking the Sabres were not a likely destination anyway. So don't lose all hope, but you should have had all the hope in the world to begin with. So that's kind of the update on the trade front. But let's dive back into free agency. I'm excited to talk about today's episode because I think that this is actually a very interesting free agency for this position. I think we talked about how goaltender is really not much. It's Jake Allen and then a bunch of guys that are fringe NHL goalies. We've talked about a lot of the forward ideas. There are big forward ideas like Mitch Marner. Sam Bennett is going back to Florida. He announced that at their party. We talked about Nikolai Ehlers on our last show. Be sure to check that out. Brock Besser is a free agent. Like there are big free agent ideas at forward. On defense, we've talked about Aaron Ekblad, who is the biggest name, but there are a lot of other ideas, some really good and some as bad as humanly possible. Well, let's dive in to some of those as we continue to kind of look for the right Owen Power partner. And I think that is still the way to frame the Sabres defenseman hunt. They do not need a Dahlin partner. I don't believe they need anything for their third pair. They need to focus on a guy to play with power. So when you think of Power and his strengths, what I would like to see the Sabres do, and I think many would, is get somebody that is stable and responsible defensively so that Power has the ability and the freedom to roam and to kind of grow into his offensive part of his game. So that leads us off with what to me is the best idea in free agency for the Buffalo Sabres on defense. And that is Vladislav Gavrikov, 29-year-old left shot defenseman of the Los Angeles Kings, formerly also of the Columbus Blue Jackets, where he spent 4 years and then the last 3 in LA. Gavrikov has been an ascending player since the early days in Columbus, where he was a second, third pair guy to where he really developed into a top pair defenseman last season and in the previous 2 also for the LA Kings. Last year, Gavrikov was only behind Drew Doughty for average minutes per night. He was a full minute behind Doughty. Gavrikov at 23.05 per night average. He also, though, played 82 games while Doughty played 30. So by a good margin, Gavrikov played more minutes than anybody on the LA Kings did last season. That is a playoff team. That was a good possession team. That was a very good defensive team, and he was a top pair defenseman for them. And then in the playoffs, in that series against the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid, it did come down a little bit to 21 minutes, but we did see him get matched up with McDavid sometimes. There's a clip you can find on YouTube of him mauling McDavid. So you are getting a bit of a physical player. 6'3", 220 pounds is Gavrikov. Last year, not a lot of hits on the stat sheet, so more can be physical. Not going to be, I think you're going to get more out of him than you will out of like a Matthias Samuelsson and others, but you're not having him come in and expecting him to be Scott Stevens. What you are bringing Gavrikov in to do is to be one of the best defensive defensemen on your team. And for the Buffalo Sabres, I think you would definitively say he would be your second best defenseman defensively behind Rasmus Dahlin. Gavrikov and how he fits with Power, that's the right fit for me. Even though he's a left shot defenseman, again, we have some numbers that point to Power is better when he plays on his offhand on his right side anyway. I envision Gavrikov and Power playing together. At Evolving Hockey, when you go to their hockey cards and look at goals above replacement and where Gavrikov lands amongst defensemen, he lands defensively in the 98th percentile. That's last season. If you do the last 3 seasons combined, then you have Gavrikov in the 96th percentile. The Kings always had the puck, and Gavrikov, when he's out there, the Kings always have the puck. He shuts plays down along the wall, out in open ice. He's a decent skater. I think you're getting a lot of good attributes out of Gavrikov that really fit well with Power. And I think if the Sabres are trying to get better defensively, which I think undoubtedly they are, and they don't want to be 29th in the league in goals given up anymore, there's not really a goalie to sign this free agent period. And I wouldn't say there's another defenseman on the market, even Aaron Ekblad, that is as good defensively as Gavrikov is. I think he might be the best idea for the Sabres in free agency. What kind of contract you'd be looking at? He is Russian. I don't know what his preference is on where to play. He's played in Columbus. He's played in LA. So I don't know what you'd be looking at. Now, the other thing to point to here, and you've heard me mention Columbus a couple of times, the connection point that could get Gavrikov to Buffalo is Jarmo Kekalainen. Jarmo Kekalainen, the current Sabres senior advisor, drafted Gavrikov in the 6th round of 2015, and he was the GM through his first 3 seasons in Columbus. There's a relationship here. I don't want to just assume it's a positive one, but that's a connection point that maybe the Sabres can utilize to get what I think is one of the best ideas for them, maybe the best idea for them in free agency, is to go get a shutdown defenseman who's still only 29 years old and go throw him with Owen Power. I would sign Gavrikov. I would offer him a big contract too. Go offer him 5-6 years at $6 million per year, and I think you could maybe get him to come. When we come back, a couple other free agent ideas, bigger names than Gavrikov, maybe not as good, but Ivan Provorov, Brian Dumoulin, Brent Burns. There are plenty of others. We'll get to them coming up on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Gametime. There is nothing like the playoffs, and sadly, it has come to an end. But, hey, listen, I know it's a far trip, but maybe you want to go check out Oklahoma City, a Game 7 NBA Finals. I know, it's pretty far from here in Buffalo, but you got a lot of baseball going on. And if you are getting that itch and you want to go see a ball game, Pittsburgh's a close drive, Cleveland, Toronto, and of course, we're entering into that concert season. We get to summer, and you've got all these great concerts all around the area, outside. Go enjoy the weekends. So go check out Gametime. They makes getting in the building fast and affordable. Gametime gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, the ticket prices often will drop the closer that you get to the event to score big without overpaying. Again, my favorite part of it is you can see what your seat's going to look like, what the view is going to be on the app before you get in there, and the no hidden fees part. You don't like seeing one price and then it's dramatically higher when you go to checkout. Gametime's not going to hide it from you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, we're talking about the blue line today and what is available to the Sabres in free agency. Gavrikov, to me, is idea number one. Well, let's go through some of the other ideas. And to me, the guy I might expect gets the biggest contract in free agency is going to be Ivan Provorov. Could be. There are a couple of names that this could be. The guys we're talking about in this episode. I think Ekblad is going to get the most money, but Provorov might come in right after him. Provorov has been a minute eater for his entire career. This guy has played on top pairs really since he showed up in the NHL. He was a 7th overall pick, first round in 2015. He goes one pick before Alex Nylander in that draft, so drafted here in Buffalo. That's 1 year before. Who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of Sergachev. Provorov drafted in the Eichel McDavid draft, 2015, 7th overall. And his rookie year, he played 22 minutes a night for Philadelphia. And he's averaged at least 22 minutes a night every year of his career, including some seasons where he got above 25. Now, a lot of that was in Philadelphia, and he got Columbus, and he kind of played in the same role. He has never been a big point producer. He did have a career year in 2018 where he scored 17 goals, put up 41 points, but more often you're getting him in the 30 to 35 point range as a defenseman. You're not really getting much of him on the power play anymore, not much production on the power play. There was a time in his career where he was getting a few more minutes on the power play. If a team like Buffalo that already has 2 power play defensemen, you'd have no need to put him out there. Now, Provorov is a left shot defenseman. He is 6'1", 213, a little bit smaller than Gavrikov. Same age, realistically, 28 for Provorov, 29 for Gavrikov. Provorov, though, what I think is the reputation of Provorov, I think, is of a, guy that could play a lot of minutes and could really be a key contributor for you on that back end. But I don't like what I see from Ivan Provorov. I see a lot of turnovers. I see a guy that reminds me, maybe not dramatically as bad as this player, but reminds me a little bit of Rasmus Ristolainen. Now, maybe not as physical as Rasmus Ristolainen was, but when it comes to getting the puck out of your own end, making the simple play, making the right reads as a defenseman, kind of quarterbacking your zone exits and setting up your zone entries, I am not impressed by Ivan Provorov in any capacity. He is, to me, kind of a terrifying idea that there are teams out there that will fall for him as a top pair guy. And I don't see it. The numbers reflect that as well. He's not a great possession player. You're never the better team when he's out there on the ice. To me, he's a defenseman that is going to command a big asking price that I don't necessarily think is worth it. I think that's one of those contracts where if he signs a big one in free agency, you're going to see Twitter, hockey Twitter, smart hockey Twitter especially, go, ooh, that's a bad deal for blank because they signed Provorov to a 6-year contract for $8 million per year. Just no thanks. I don't want any part of it if I am the Buffalo Sabres. He is absolutely on my do not sign list. He's a guy that can play the penalty kill, but not someone that I think is so good at it that is going to give you enough worth for whatever that contract is going to look like. So I'm out. Now, the Columbus wants to sign him anyway, but again, not an idea for me for the Sabres is Ivan Provorov. I like Gavrikov more, and there are a couple of other ideas that I like more, although I will say there's one idea in free agency that I like even less on the blue line, less than Provorov. Get to that coming back here on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is the highest protein nut, and each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keeping you feeling fuller longer. I like the no shells. That's me. I just go for the handful of them. But if you like the shells, if you like that satisfying crack of opening each one, it's like snack meditation, then you can get that too. Whether you're running between meetings or you're dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here. We're talking defensemen on today's show on the blue line. What should the Sabres look for, and what should they look for an Owen Power partner? I like Gavrikov. I don't like Provorov. Well, some other ideas. How about, let's start here, Brian Dumoulin. Brian Dumoulin is scheduled to become a free agent. 6'4", 214 pounds. He is a longtime player in the league, 12 years in the NHL. Over 700 games played, also 86 playoff games played, 2-time Stanley Cup winner with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He played over 21 minutes a night in both of those cup runs for the Penguins. Had some playoff experiences past year with the New Jersey Devils. And he is a guy that, interestingly, has played more in the postseason than he has in the regular season because of his physical nature and the shot blocking. And like last year, or really for his career, 20:07. 20 minutes, 7 seconds. That's his average ice time for his regular season career. 22:05 in the playoffs. You get almost 2 more minutes a night for Brian Dumoulin. I think that is representative of the type of player that you're getting. You're getting a responsible defender. You're getting a shot blocker. You're getting a physical player. You're getting a veteran. And when we talk about Power, there are different types of things that I think are of value to him. I think a stay-at-home defenseman, a good defender, is, of course, number one. And that's why I like Gavrikov for this. But also a mentor, a guy that can sit with him out with the iPad on the bench, kind of, roommates even. I don't know. Just you guys are tied at the hip for the entire season. This is someone that is going to help mold you as a player now that you should start entering the prime of your career. And what kind of player do you want to be in the prime of your career? The molding of Owen Power, that's where a guy like a Brian Dumoulin maybe comes in as making some sense. And I do think you have had Dumoulin being a solid defensive defenseman pretty much every year, although I was reading about his season last year in New Jersey, and maybe that wasn't happening so much with the Devils, that maybe last year was a little bit of a down year for him. And he is 33 years old. Soon he'll be 34 at the start of the 24-25 season, but 25-26 season, excuse me. But I do think that there is some left in the tank. It was only 2 years ago that he was putting up some really solid numbers defensively. He's not going to give you anything offensively. Career high is 23 points. He's 25 points. He's never going to play the power play. But Dumoulin, to me, is a solid idea, and kind of an idea you could see for the Sabres, right? Like 34-year-old player, kind of past the prime of his career. Maybe he's looking for one more big contract, and the Sabres could be a team that would overpay a 34-year-old like that and be able to land him. So Dumoulin might be a realistic idea for the Sabres. As a lot of these guys are, he is also a left shot defenseman, so I need Power on the right side. The idea that I hate the most, more than anybody we've talked about today, because it feels too much like Connor Clifton to me. I don't want any part of the Sabres signing Matt Grzelcyk, formerly of the Boston Bruins, and then this past year with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He had a career year. He had 40 points. Very odd stat line, by the way. Matt Grzelcyk, 31-year-old season, 5'10", 180, not a big player, but a physical player. He is a guy that is like near the top of the list in shot blocks all the time. His stat line was 1 goal and 39 assists. Very, very strange season, playing over 20 minutes a night for the first time in his career on a bad Penguins team. Grzelcyk, terrible advanced numbers, smallish defenseman, tough competitor, shot blocker, hits. Boston, years and years in Boston. Does it sound like somebody familiar? Does it sound like somebody familiar? I think this is your Connor Clifton clone. Matt Grzelcyk is, to me, he's Clifton 2.0. And he's not a player I have any appetite for them going after at all. I think you're just hitting the reset button on a free agent signing that hasn't really worked at all in Connor Clifton. I mean, I'm ready to get Clifton off the team right now with a buyout. So to add another guy that's similar in a lot of different ways, that's the worst idea to me. And that 40-point season that he just had, I think you're going to see that come back down. He's never had more than 26 in 8 years before that. I think that was an anomaly. So, I mean, the year prior, he had 11 points in 63 games for Boston. Grzelcyk, to me, that's the worst idea imaginable. It's not like he's young either. He's going to be 32 years old during this upcoming season. Brent Burns is another name I wanted to mention here. Now, he might fit the profile for Power as a mentor and as a leader, a longtime veteran that's been to the Stanley Cup final. Like, he knows what it takes. Burns is 40. And he always has been, a very good offensive defenseman. That's not really, to me, what the Sabres need, though. They need a guy for their own end, and Burns never has given you that. And the numbers offensively have started to dry up. Only 29 points last year for Carolina. If he does continue to play in the NHL, I think it might be over for him. So Brent Burns, to me, big name, big idea. That's the type of signing where Sabre fans would move the meter because it'd be, oh, I know him. Big bearded guy. Like, all right, I like that. But I think there are a lot of reasons to not do it if you're the Sabres, not to call him, not to even get in on it. Plus, I'm not sure he'd want to spend his last year on a team that's tough to convince that is going to be giving him a shot at a Stanley Cup. So that's where I stand on Burns. Any other names really are a little further down the list. Dmitry Orlov is the one other that I wanted to mention. Orlov, down year in Carolina, teammate of Brent Burns last year. He has been very up and down throughout his career, but he has had some fantastic seasons. He's been a very good defensive defenseman, especially going back to his days in Washington. You could say not this past year, but the year before in Carolina was a pretty good year for him as well. But in Carolina, the role decreased. He was not a top pair guy like he was in Washington. It really did go down. 33 years old, going to be 34 by the start of the year. I'm not sure how much is left in the tank. A down year last season, kind of like Dumoulin. I think you kind of got to bet on, all right, was that a fluke? Does he still have anything left in the tank? And for Orlov, it's a little bit risky. The difference with Orlov is I think you're going to have to spend more to get him than you're going to have to spend for Brian Dumoulin. So between those two, I might lean Dumoulin, but I think they're both pretty close. Those are good defensive players. When they're good, they're good defensive players that aren't going to give you a ton offensively. Orlov used to a little bit earlier in his career. And I think Power as their partner, it's not a bad idea. I think you could do better, though, and I still think Gavrikov is the idea of doing better. Notice something, and this has just become more of a trend in the NHL. Every player we talked about was a left shot defenseman. They're all left shot defensemen. But again, that's okay because Power is very capable of playing on the right. There's really nobody worth mentioning that's a right shot defenseman, in my opinion, for this. So will the Sabres sign one of the guys we talked about? I bet they probably do. I bet one of the names that we've talked about today, Gavrikov, Provorov, Dumoulin, I don't think it's probably Brent Burns, Dmitry Orlov, Matt Grzelcyk, fingers crossed it's not him. One of those names, I think I would bet the Sabres sign one of those names. I think they're going to be aggressive and they know what they need, and they need an Owen Power partner. All right, it's going to do it for us today. Do it for the week. Next week is draft week, so we'll talk some prospects. We'll talk 9th overall pick, what the Sabres could get for it if they trade it, and also if they stay there, options. And we'll continue to talk free agency and trades as we are expecting some movement. Hey, maybe by the time we talk on Monday, there is movement for the Buffalo Sabres, and there's a move that's been made. We'll see. So be sure to check it out or stay tuned for next week, and we'll talk to you then. Check out Locked On NHL for all things offseason in the National Hockey League. They're available on the Locked On NHL feed wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Talk to you Monday here on Locked On Sabres, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.